I'm still on bullet journal, Mike.
Nice.
Are you?
I am too, but it's not a bullet journal. So
So you're not on bullet journal.
I'm on bullet journal light asterisk.
Bullet journal light asterisk. At some point, the asterisk just should be removed. You know that.
True. Well, okay. So I'm actually working on a pretty big article for the Suite Setup. It'll be live by the time this goes out. So I'll put a link in the show notes. And it's so far over 3,500 words on my hybrid bullet journal productivity system. But I use an asterisk on the term bullet journal because I'm not doing it the way that Writer Carol would endorse. But the elements of it that I am using are basically the daily log. Like everything starts and ends in the bullet journal. At the beginning of my day, everything, like the whole plan is there, including the time blocking, the tasks that I'm going to do in the day. And then I use it as my daily log too. So everything gets captured there. And then after I capture everything there, or actually the other place that I will capture things occasionally is drafts. Like I'll be out for a run, have an idea. I'll use Siri dictation to jot it down in drafts. But then ultimately all of that stuff ends up inside of Roam Research, along with mind maps from MindNode and sketch notes from GoodNotes. And then Roam is the thing that I use to drive my tasks and to connect all of the ideas. I'll also pull in stuff from Basecamp and do my time blocking and stuff. I've actually got an image which is going to be in that article. I will share that here with the people who are joining us live. Give me just a second.
When does this article go live?
It will go live as we record this Tuesday, so a couple days before this. But this is my analog charting of my system. And I did this analog because it's more enjoyable. And that's kind of the gist of the article, is that I really enjoy using pen and paper, and I've incorporated the parts of the bullet journal that I liked with that, and then basically offloaded all of the collections and the future logs, the monthly logs, all that kind of stuff. I'm still playing around with Roam. Had an article actually go out this week on the Suite Setup about some of the ways that I'm using it with some videos and stuff. But I keep finding new and cool ways to connect things, which is kind of the point, the connected thoughts, not the filing cabinets, where you can go find something if you think about it, but just recognizing how things connect together. It takes a little bit more effort when you put stuff into it, but
sure,
I really like it. And I know you've been playing around with Obsidian. I think that does kind of the same sort of thing. There's a couple reasons why I still like Roam. Big thing being linking to blocks, not headers or pages. I don't think you can do that currently with Obsidian. But Obsidian is a good app too, and it can totally do this sort of thing. So if you don't want to use Roam and you want to have control of your local text files, then Obsidian is a great recommendation that we picked up last time we recorded.
Yeah. I had someone mention it. It was either the last time or the time before that I originally became aware of it. And I'm now on the beta for it because it actually makes sense, and I can actually use my existing plain text file notes in a local directory and open multiple local directories with it. Depending on how you set up your note structure, like Mike's talking about, you can't link to blocks. They don't really have a concept of blocks because you have to think of it as these are markdown files.
Yep.
So if you're thinking about markdown files, you can link to other notes with wiki links, and they do have it to where you can link to other headers. So if you put in a header, you could link to it from another note as well. So depending on how you want to set things up, it just kind of depends on how your brain works and what you're trying to put into it, I think.
Yep.
I still have not delved into Roam because the more I see and learn about it, the less I like about it. So I know you have it as a mission to get me to at least try it. It's like, well, I at least filled out the form for the beta to find out, like, should I go down this road? At the same time, like, I know like pricing for Obsidian and pricing for Roam is definitely a thing that people are considering, but
yep.
At the end of the day, I spend more time writing in my paper notebook than I do typing notes into a digital thing. So here we are in the analog world. Fun times.
Yeah, so I don't think, honestly, Roam, based on how you currently use stuff, is probably the right tool for you. But it is, for me, there's specific things that, like Obsidian, just wouldn't work unless I completely changed some stuff, which is fine. Maybe I could change some stuff and that would be a better way to do it. I don't know. I'm willing to be wrong, but I'm really enjoying Roam at the moment. And basically what it's done is it's consolidated all of the buckets for me. So I am currently playing with managing all of my tasks, personal tasks anyways, inside of Roam. It doesn't have repeating tasks. It doesn't have like a forecast view, but it has queries, which allows me to build basically like a My Tasks page inside of Asana, where you can automatically pull in all the things that haven't been scheduled and automatically pull in all the things that are due today and all of the things that are tagged for someday maybe or whatever. Queries are pretty cool. And I don't know, I need to still put it through its paces, but so far I'm really digging this system. And having basically like one central place where everything goes, that allows me to connect things. So when I have a task to write an article, I have the page for that article. I've got inside of Roam as an example, or an article maybe is a bad idea because I do that a little bit differently. Actually, I've got a Kanban board inside of Roam that tracks my articles linked to my Ulysses sheets.
Nice. Of course.
Yeah, but like being able to connect all that stuff is way better than putting the link to like an Evernote document inside of an OmniFocus task, which is how I would have done that back in the day.
Sure.
I'm finding I don't need a whole lot of task management power. I just need a simple place to keep some lists. And Roam kind of reminds me a lot of Task Paper in terms of the task management and some of the other stuff that you can do in it. So we will see.
Nice. Well, the thing I've been doing a lot, and I've brought up bullet journaling the last 4 episodes now. Was it 4 episodes ago we actually went through the bullet journal method? I forget how long ago it
was. Episode 92. Yep.
Okay, so it's been a little while now, but the thing I've been doing a lot with it, like I've done a couple monthly migrations, actually live streamed my last monthly migration on Twitch. So I can get you a link to that one.
All right.
It's a 2-hour long video of the whole process of doing a migration, and we do it live together. Great fun. And had a number of people join that and have watched it since. The thing with that type of live stream is you should know it's not really it's not like a YouTube video. It's not a thing where you sit down and watch it. Like the whole thing is just turn it on, keep working on things, and we'll talk, while you're doing other things. It's kind of a way to hang out together. So if that's something of interest to you, I am thinking about doing 3 more of these in the upcoming weeks. So great fun there. But there is one thing I'm doing, Mike, that we need to talk about here, because I feel like in light of all the bullet journaling and pen and paper stuff, I've been working on a revamp of the Analog Joe site. You started calling me Analog Joe, I don't know how long ago.
This is totally my fault. I sent you the domain and said, this is available.
100%. He sends me this text. He's like, by the way, analogjoe.com does exist and it is available.
And you bought it like 6 months before you launched anything on it, I think.
Yeah, I bought it like right away.
I don't think you knew what you were going to do with it. You just like, I need that.
Correct. I needed to own it. I knew that, but I didn't know what to do with it. And I don't know how long ago it's been now, but I opened up a community around that. And that has kind of stagnated because I haven't had good direction on what that should be. But with a lot of some life circumstances and what I've been doing online or not doing online and such, I've learned quite a bit about myself and how those things should run, and actually have my wife involved in this round of things that I'm doing because she's a lot more focused on what should or shouldn't be done in scenarios. So she has been helping me through the process of doing a full-blown relaunch of Analog Joe. And I think I sent you, Mike, the link to the site that I'm rebuilding it into. And actually right now, for those listening live, you can go to analogjoe.com. For those listening to the recording of this, the full relaunch and stuff will be out by the time you hear this episode. but it is morphing into, if you're familiar with Tim Stringer and Learn OmniFocus, it's going to mimic that process. So bi-weekly webinars, potentially moving into some office hours and such, but doing some things like, I think the first one we're going to do is how to get started with the bullet journal, because I feel like it's a really good place to start with it.
Nice.
So it is a membership site. So it is transformed into that. It's less community-esque and more video-based setup. So analogjoe.com. And I do have a discount that I'll give to Bookworm listeners, which will take half off at setup, and that is a forever discount. So
beautiful.
Just saying, that's a thing. So it's not ready and it's not launched right now as you and I are recording, but by the time this episode releases, it will be. So here's a way to hold Joe accountable to actually getting it all done and out the door in time.
So much stuff is going to be ready in a couple of days.
It's true. It's true. That's the way things work with us. So
I've got one more follow-up item actually, which isn't on the list, but I remember we talked about last time I wanted to reevaluate my my habits and consider the factors that were leading to some of my habits not sticking, in particular, like the journaling one. And I bring this up since it's relevant. You're talking about the Analog Joe thing. One of the things that I want to try is journaling in my bullet journal, pen and paper. But I've already done a couple of things which have made it more successful. So as follow-up from the last episode, basically what I was doing is getting to the end of the day, being drained when I got the notification to journal in day one, and resisting it. And I was kind of questioning, like, why am I resisting it? Well, it turns out I was trying to do a lot of things in my evening routine because I had the time to do them, but I definitely did not have the energy to do them. So I was actually trying to plan my day, do the journaling, and then also, if I had forgotten to do it, squeeze in a Spanish lesson. Well, the Spanish lesson kind of drifted to the end of the day because that used to be something that I would do whenever I had a few minutes when I was out and about, and that was like an intentional thing I could do on my phone instead of checking Twitter, like a positive use of my technology. Well, I don't leave the house anymore, so I drove my car the other day for like the first time in 3 weeks. just to make sure that it would still start.
Well done, sir. I have friends who are going on road trips. They don't go anywhere. They drive an hour north and they, grab, a snack that they packed with them, turn around, drive home.
I've been tempted to do that. So basically all that stuff was piling up at the end of the day. And like I said, I had the time to do all of those things. I definitely didn't have the energy to do them all. So I'm trying to move the Spanish stuff to earlier in the day. I have incorporated the planning my day as part of my shutdown routine at the end of the day, which is the thing that I kind of just like kicked off. I would push it off, and I didn't really take it seriously a lot of times. Like, I'm going to work until whatever time, and then, I got to go do something else, and then just like forget to do it. But putting that at the end of my workday actually makes the shutdown routine more sticky and helps me to process my drafts inbox and make sure that that's clean and all that type of stuff. So basically, the planning my day thing, that has been the thing that like was rock solid. And I continue to do that, but by doing it at the end of my workday, 4 or 5 o'clock, that actually makes both the evening routine and the rest of the stuff that I'm supposed to be doing with my shutdown routine more successful. So I think that's a win based on what we learned in Tiny Habits.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think, I haven't done a lot with Tiny Habits other than when we get to today's book. I have a number of things with that I've been realizing have been amplified by what we went through in Tiny Habits, like how to implement some things. So
sure,
that's probably a good place there to jump into today's book, which is Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday. Now, we've done one other book by Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way. That's way back.
Yep.
Is that like episode 3 or 4? Like it was single digits. It's been a while. So that one, I know we really enjoyed at the time, and I think it's safe to say this is, I wouldn't say a repeat, but it's definitely a one it's a book that I enjoyed reading for sure, and have lots and lots and lots of thoughts about different aspects of it. But yeah, I mean, it's a book that I'm very likely to go through again at some point, and I'm excited about going through here today. So, anything you want to say about it before we jump into it?
The Obstacle is the Way was episode 4, by the way, real-time follow-up. But I think that the way that this book is laid out is interesting because I have a Bible college degree, and one of the courses that I took was spirit, soul, and body. And that's basically how he divides this book. This is not a religious text, but I thought it was interesting. He breaks it down into mind, spirit, and body. But my Bible college curriculum would call the mind the soul section. And I thought that was interesting how those things mapped. He actually does talk quite a bit about different religions in this book and how they support the points that he's making. So if you are turned off by religious talk, I apologize, but it's in this book, so it's going to come up.
Yeah, it's kind of a whoops, here we go. He even mentions Christianity quite a bit, which I was not expecting.
He does. He mentions a lot of different religions, but one other thing about this, which I thought was really interesting, he mentions Christianity. Most people who mention Christianity who are not Christians, I don't really want to hear what you have to say. It's usually not very accurate, in my opinion.
Sure, yeah.
But I feel like he did a really good job. He knows his stuff. He does the research. He's talking about like the Greek and Hebrew meanings of the words that they use in the sacred texts and things like that. So Ryan Holiday is, I've not met him, but he's got to be one of the smartest dudes that's alive. Just like a walking encyclopedia of knowledge.
Right. Or at least super well read and still enough to actually have rational thoughts on things. So yeah, no, it's an interesting read. So yeah, I agree with you with the whole mind, spirit, body piece. Like it was interesting to me that that's laid out because that's a very, I don't want to say it's a Christian thing, but in religious circles, that 3-part complex of sorts is one that is discussed and talked about and used as a framework very regularly. So it does not surprise me if you're going to step into something that's similar to Stoicism or derives some of its basis from, religion in any form. It's not surprising to see that breakout. So definitely of interest there. The first one that he dives into here is the mind, which when he started there, I totally get it because you kind of have to start there in the realm of, when you go through these 3. And there are, I guess I don't have it open right in front of me, but I can get it open.
This is purely knowing your audience and knowing the people who are picking up a nonfiction book, what is probably dominant in their own lives.
Right. He totally played that. There are quite a few, like these are fairly short chapters. There's a lot of chapters in this book. It is 257 pages long. It's a small book, so those are actually small pages. So it's not super, like it doesn't feel like a 250-page book, even though it is.
And most of the chapters are a couple of pages, but they're all kind of formulated the same way. He's got a story, he's got his point, and then kind of at the end usually is like a rallying cry or a call to action. He's a very, very good writer. A lot of these chapters could have been a lot longer, but he does a great job of condensing things down to short phrases, and it's really easy and entertaining to read.
Yeah, so and I don't want to cover all of these. I've just got a couple points, 2 to 3 points per each of these. So we've got, 7 talking points here?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll talk about the sections, and the chapter markers in the episode will be based off of the sections, but we'll pick out a couple things from the sections, not go through all the chapters, because that would be impossible.
Right, yeah, it's so true. So let me just read off what the chapters are under the part 1 for mind. Just because you can make I don't want to say assumptions, but you can get the gist of it just from the chapter titles. I can't say that you get the whole point until you read it, of course, but it'll at least get you the overarching on it. So here we go. The domain of the mind, which he does that in every part. He has like the first chapter is just explaining what it is he's about to go through. And then he dives into become present, limit your inputs, empty the mind, slow down, think deeply, start journaling, cultivate silence, seek wisdom, find confidence, avoid ego, let go. And then at the end of every part, he has a on to what's next outside of the last one, in which he just says on to the final act. So that's kind of the lay of the land for the first part. And the one that probably the first one that jumped out at me in the midst of all of this was the journaling piece. We were talking about this a little bit earlier, and I have had this on and off again relationship with journaling. I've never fully embraced it in a long-term successful scenario. I think the longest I've ever journaled without breaks is about 3 weeks. I know it's not over a month. I'm aware of that, which is a confession in itself. So yes, I came away from that convicted for sure.
There's so much in these little chapters. The MindNode file for this basically has a couple of points from each of these. I didn't try to even keep up with all the stories that he was telling, but he mentions in the journaling section a couple of things which I thought were important. Number one, how you journal is much less important than why, to get something off of your chest. And that kind of got me thinking about why I mentioned in the follow-up section to the Tiny Habits thing, how I want to start journaling in my bullet journal. And again, apologies to writer Carol for calling it that. I just don't have a term yet. Mike's hacky hybrid journal system.
Just call it journaling.
Okay. But I do find myself wanting to use pen and paper as often as possible. So I set up everything the day before with the time blocking and the tasks. I use it for daily logging. I find that when I am attending meetings and taking notes, even though the meetings are probably on Zoom on my computer and Drafts is right there, I still take them pen and paper because I like to. And my notes throughout my day sometimes span several pages. When I want to just like make a quick list of things, that happens in the journal. When I want to just kick around an idea, I'll do some sketching inside of the journal. The bigger stuff like mind mapping for an article or whatever, that still happens inside of MindNode, and the sketch notes for like the sermon notes and stuff, that still happens in GoodNotes. But basically everything else I'm trying to use the bullet journal for. And every time I do, I really, really like it. And I love the fact that I can rip out my pages because they're circa punched and I can put in some new ones. Like, I don't worry about running out of space. I don't worry about, do I want this to remain in the notebook and I don't want to have to write it again? You know, I understand why you shouldn't worry about that anyways, but I do. And so this is the thing that's finally like released me mentally not to worry about that. And so I'm writing everything in here. And I want to kind of change my journaling setup at the end of the day. I've always used these prompts, and I've always thought like, these are the prompts that I should use. The prompt really makes the journaling practice. And Ryan Holiday's basically saying, no,
Nope.
You're wrong. You just got to do it. He also says that journaling isn't for the reader, it's for the writer. And I think there's some truth to that, you know, just sorting through emotionally, like what happened today, especially as we record this, the last couple of weeks have been a whirlwind. And I've been wrestling with some stuff. So like, why not do that paper pen in my notebook? I guess I'll report back next time if that really like sticks. But really what I want to have happen here is just at the end of the day, write down even a couple of sentences about what am I feeling right now. And it doesn't have to do with what time I got up this morning, what my biggest accomplishment was, whether I went for a run, any of that stuff. Like all the daily logging or quantified self stuff, I'm ready to just chuck it out the window. And I just want to process through some thoughts before I go to bed. That's the goal anyways.
Yeah. I would say, like, in the book, he explains how journaling is more about helping yourself decipher what your thoughts and feelings are about events that happen throughout the day. Like, I feel like that's what he was really getting at. And I think that's the part that I've missed, because I think I'm like you. I've always considered like the prompts and having a certain question you answer every day. Like, I get that, but I'm ADD and can't focus on the same silly thing every single night because it's boring after week 3. So I like the freedom of not having anything specific locked down and just having a few thoughts about what happened in that day. Like, usually there's something either pretty good or pretty bad that happened, and I need to process what I'm thinking about it. This is also where, like, people often say, like, I don't know what I think until I've written out an article on it or published a blog post or, done a podcast about it. The whole unpublished thought concept, which I get that, but at the same time, it's like, okay, I have so many of those that it would take me forever to just write what happened in one day. it would not work out. So
yeah,
I think that was a point at which I realized that for me, journaling is something I should be doing at night, and I just need to process my thoughts. Like, if something rough happened that day, I'm in Minnesota in the midst of all the police and protests and riots and stuff that's happening right now. It is not far from my house. I'm not in the thick of it, but it's definitely, I would not have to drive very far to run into things. And we've had protests and stuff here in our town. So there is that to work through. Like, that is not something that's simple to get your thoughts around. I mean, for some people it is, because they've been thinking about it and working through it for a long time. I am not one of those people. And I feel like I need to process that. And, I'm with you as well in the world of this should live in my bullet journal. So technically, how I'm doing this, I have a specific pin. It's a TWSBI Diamond 580 with a fine nib and Noodler's black ink for those who care. This is specific now. And all I'm doing is at the end of my daily log, I just reserve 3 or 4, 10 lines, whatever it needs to be. And I just write out whatever it is that's bothering me. I write pretty small, so I can get a lot of words in that span. And that is how I end my day, is by going through that process and just putting my thoughts down on paper so that I can get it out of my head and I can actually think clearly. I sleep a lot better when I do this, Mike. So, which is a thing he points out for sure.
Yep. Yeah, he does. And this emphasis on not carrying around the mental baggage and putting the things on the paper, that reminds me a lot of the morning pages, except not in the morning, but that stream of conscious
Evening
writing.
pages.
Yeah. And I did have a thought to try that again, but I immediately suppressed it because it takes so much time.
Yeah, I remember it was like 45 minutes in the morning for me. I don't have that kind of time anymore.
Yeah. But I do think that would be a valuable practice. I'm not sure if I want to codify that yet and say this is something that I'm going to build into my system. But I think that defaulting to expressing how I'm feeling in a notebook multiple times per day would definitely have a positive effect on not just how I'm feeling emotionally, but also mentally, probably allowing me to engage with the work that I'm supposed to be doing in the middle of the day a little bit more effectively. Because this week has been rough specifically, where, like you mentioned, I've kind of been wrestling through some stuff. One of the things that I've been thinking about, not to completely go down this rabbit hole, but like I've been thinking about how to explain what's going on to my kids. And I'm struggling with that, which means that I'm not really doing that And that in and of itself, I recognize is a bit of a privilege that if I don't bring it up, they don't even know that this is happening because they're not living in the middle of it every day. But I have African American friends who live nearby, and I've been thinking about them and like, what kind of conversations are they having with their kids? It hurts my heart to think about that stuff. And I realized that instead of trying to just think about it in my head and feel bad about it, that I should probably one of the more effective things that I could do. Well, first of all, I mean, there's a whole section in here about the spirit. So I do believe in the power of prayer. I need to be praying about it more. But also, I think I could organize my thoughts a bit better if I took the time to write them down.
It's very fair. It's a thing I've been trying to do. We can't really avoid, like, we've had a lot of conversations with our kids about things because where we are, you can't get away from it. So there's not really that option, which I don't want that option, frankly. We've just been in a place where, like, I wouldn't say our town is really super diverse, but it's not exclusive on one race or another. So we've had a lot of conversations with our girls in the past. So I don't want to make this all about current events, but it's a thing that we have had to talk about. And I know that for me, journaling out my own thoughts about it makes it possible for me to have a better and more thought out conversation with them about it. It also works the other way, Mike, because trying to explain it to a 5-year-old forces you to dumb things down at a level where things don't always, they're not rational when you start and try to explain it to them. It's like, well, you see, some people think this and they are absolutely wrong. So you have to explain it in a way that they can understand. But anyway, all of this to say, journaling, I've been doing it now at the end of my daily log as part of my PM bullet journal. For those who joined me on the live stream this past Monday, so that was the June 1st, you know that I'm bad at doing my PM bullet journal. So I'm getting better now because whenever I do the journaling bit at night and just process my thoughts at that time, it works out really well. So that's a thing there. Now, there's another section in this part about the mind, Mike, that I feel like we must cover. And there's not a specific chapter on it, I don't think. It's actually covered, I think, in 2 or 3 chapters within this.
Yep.
The world of meditation. Again. Here we go. I would love to know how many times we've had this conversation about meditation. It comes up a lot.
Yeah, I don't even know. It is a lot.
And we haven't actually done a book 100% on meditation, have we? I don't think we have.
I don't think so.
It would have to be 10% happier, I think.
He's got a how-to book. 10% happier is kind of his story, but he's got a how-to book called Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics or something like that.
That's what it
so
is, yeah.
That would be the one if we did cover it.
Yep,
that's
true. It. I'm not going to pick that one for next. I was going to say that. I do know that, like, for me and ADD people, like, they say that meditation is super helpful. And if you look at, like, the non-medication routes of treating it, that's, like, towards the top of the list almost every time. Ryan Holiday talks a lot about emptying your mind and the benefits of being able to do that so that when rough or high velocity conversations and events occur, it would help you to slow down and make better rational decisions. That's probably the way to explain it. But it means you have to meditate regularly, Mike.
Well, I think meditation, because you're right, there isn't a specific section on this. But what he's talking about is stillness, and this is kind of exactly what I view mindfulness meditation as. I think a lot of people are turned off, a lot of spiritual people maybe are turned off to the idea of meditation because they associate it with, at least in my circles, they associate it with an Eastern religion, but there really isn't a spiritual aspect of it when you're just talking about mindfulness meditation. Now, there are different aspects of it, like Vipassana, I think, is another one. There's some other flavors of this which I don't like to get into. But I think that in terms of training your brain to let things go and to focus on just your breath, that is got absolutely physical and mental benefits. And so, like you, I think maybe based on what I am hearing, I I have struggled maintaining a meditation habit. When I read this section again, because this was a gap book for me originally, the thing that stood out to me was that meditation could be an effective practice to create stillness, but so could journaling, and so could a bunch of other things. So I don't know exactly yet where I land on, is this something that I feel like I should pick up again or not? I think the next thing for me is to step up the journaling and to break away from the prompts that I have relied on for so many years. This might be a step after that, but I don't know that it's necessary for sure. If you're trying to achieve maximum stillness, then yes, I would say it probably is necessary. But if you're just trying to achieve more stillness, my interpretation of this section is that there's a couple different tactics you can employ to help you get to that point. And for me, journaling is the next step.
Sure. Yeah, no, it makes sense. I feel like we didn't actually explain stillness. Have we done that? My brain is bouncing and I can't recall. I feel like that's probably the place we should start with this whole thing, but here we are.
Well, we jumped into the first section, and by the time you read the first section, it kind of assumes that you understand what stillness is. There is an introduction, which is fairly short. I don't have a whole lot of notes from the introduction, but I do have this quote, which I'll share here, because a lot of this is based in Stoic philosophy. He says, to Seneca and to his fellow adherents of Stoic philosophy, if a person could develop peace within themselves, if they could achieve apatheia, as they called it, then the whole world could be at war and they could still think well, work well, and be well. So that's kind of what you're striving for, is like an inner peace regardless of what is happening around you. And he talks about the domain of the mind. We need stillness to be present, to empty our mind of preconceptions, to take our time, sit quietly and reflect, reject distraction, weigh advice, be deliberate, all of these types of things without being paralyzed. So I think most people, anyways, who are listening to this probably have an idea of what stillness is, because this is what all the productivity people talk about in terms of focus or flow, I would argue. But in this book, he's not talking about it as something to be achieved. It's like a state of being that you fight for. And then these three sections, this is like the three different arenas that it could play out in. And all the chapters are basically just things that you can do to cultivate it.
Yep. I am trying meditation again, though, because it's what we do when we read about meditation. At least it's what I do.
So am I. I have my manual habit tracker in the back of my bullet journal, and meditation is on there. Although last month I only did it a couple of times.
Okay. I've done it a couple times this week, which I feel like is an improvement for me. I've been working through a lot of difficult things for Joe mentally, given like all the scenarios and such that are like COVID-19 and rioting and protests and police brutality and all that stuff aside. Before all of that, I had some things I've been struggling with that are just pure mental issues, maybe not issues, but dysfunctions of sorts that I'm learning about and this is partly why I've been talking about ADD more often lately, just because I'm learning that's like the crux of a lot of those issues. But, as a result of all that, I'm learning that like I have to slow down, like otherwise my mental game is going to collapse. So I'm trying to work through that, and world events have simply complicated the matter. Again, there's nothing wrong with that per se. It's just a thing that I have to process. So as a result of all that, I've been having lots and lots of conversations about where my time goes, what I'm working on, what should get my focus and such. I've been having a lot of those conversations primarily with my wife, who has is now becoming more involved in like what those decisions are, because Joe has a tendency to just bounce from thing to thing. If you have been close to me for any length of time, you know this. Like, how many times do I get a harebrained idea and run off with it, and then a month later it's completely off the radar? I have no idea what's going on. That's Joe. I'm aware of that and trying to figure out how to keep it under control. And the things that I'm learning from specialists and people around me is that like I have to try to process my thoughts, thus the journaling. So I have that, I guess, as an action item to be doing that more often. I continue to have people telling me about meditation, and it's a thing I need to do. So then reading this doesn't help the matter and has me exploring that concept yet again. But I've had cases in the past where that has struck me, and it's a thing I've wanted to become more routine. I might be reaching a point where it's almost vital. So I need to, I got to get this one under control, I think. So here we are. We'll try it again. I have a like a whole tick mark thing, which now there's video of it. For how I do the habit tracking. Are you doing it the same way I'm doing it in the Bujo, or do you have a different way of doing that?
Minus the pretty graphs, but yeah.
So you do the dot thing?
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of a cool way to do it. But that is a way I've found, like, because I'm checking in with those habits a few times in a day. So it does help me try to keep things updating. That's a thing that I have found is helpful, is seeing those dots and seeing them line up. So analog for the win.
Yep, I agree. One other thing from this section on limit your inputs, he talked about how Napoleon wouldn't open his mail for 3 weeks and how he loved to note how many important issues had resolved themselves. I immediately thought of email and all of the pressure that's associated with responding immediately. And I get it that sometimes you're in a position where you can't do anything about that, but I love that Napoleon did this, and basically the call is to limit your inputs. This is interesting, and it's one of my action items to consider this, because as we're recording it, we are kind of going back to, we're coming out of quarantine, I guess. Things are opening up and returning to normal. And my wife and I, in the middle of this, we're talking and mentioning that like we don't want to just go back to the way things were. We want to reconsider the things that we're committed to and look for alternative ways to do things maybe than the way we had been doing them. One example of that is like we used to be at the local music shop all night on Monday nights for piano lessons, but we've been doing them virtually, and kids have been doing great with those. So can we continue that? And if those teachers don't want to do that because they prefer the way that they were doing things, maybe we can find some other teachers that are, because then we don't have to travel. We don't have to sit there. We don't have to keep a 2-year-old busy. Like, it just simplifies everything. And we have more stillness because we've limited the inputs, or at least rethought the inputs. So it's not just the things like the email that's vying for your attention. I feel like it's the commitments that you voluntarily sign up for. And this has kind of been like a reset period. So everybody has the opportunity to rethink things and to say, you know what, I'm not going to do that anymore. Or at least if you just need a little bit more time, I think there's a lot of understanding for people who would say, you know what, I'm just not ready for that right now. I'm not going to jump back into the way we were doing things quite yet. You guys go ahead. I'll catch up, But if you need a little bit more time just to think things through, I think that's an understandable and acceptable response right now.
Yeah, it's easier to get away with it right now.
Yep.
So there's that. Let's go on to the next part here. So part 2 is spirit. And I want to do what I did last time. Let's just read through these chapters. We've got 2 of them specifically that we'll dive into, but he starts off with the domain of the soul. He starts them all off with the domain of. So the domain of the soul, choose virtue, heal the inner child, beware desire, enough, bathe in beauty, accept a higher power, enter relationships, conquer your anger, all is one, and then again, on to what's next. And the first one of these that I think there's a lot of things we could go through, like defining what is virtue and what do each of these stand for. But the one I think that embodies a lot of the other pieces to some degree or another is enough. And again, he tells all kinds of stories about some prominent leaders and sports figures, both their successes and their failures. And in a lot of cases, if he touts one particular individual, he'll tell a story later that completely shows you they're human. Mm-hmm. Like he talks about how great John F. Kennedy was in the Cuban Missile Crisis, and then turns around and shows how he had demons of his own that he was fighting and potentially ruined a lot of relationships in the process. So if he touts one person, he's very commonly showing the other side of the coin. And
he picks Tiger Woods apart.
Yeah, he completely tears Tiger Woods apart.
And I should say, like, this is an interesting thing in Ryan Holiday's style, is that he's basically psychoanalyzing these people and pointing out all of their flaws. But you don't feel like he's a jerk for doing it because he has done so much research and he writes so factually and so well that it's very easy to read. I do think there is another version of this book somewhere where you read these stories and you just feel depressed because there's some bad stuff that's going on here. But that's not the feeling you get after reading this stuff. It's more like he's pointing out the pitfalls, like be careful to stay away from this because even Tiger Woods, even John F. Kennedy, they struggled with this.
Yeah. Kind of puts things in a light where I feel a little bit better about myself. It's like, okay. But the piece here, he talks about enough. And he mentions this word elsewhere, actually in the story of Tiger Woods, where his dad gave him a safe word. His dad kind of would berate him and drag him down, if you know his past, on like whenever he was actually practicing golf, he would try to throw him off his game and, you know, insult him regularly as he's golfing, trying to improve his mental strength. But they had a safe word, enough. And they called it the E word because they didn't want to say it. It was almost an expletive to them.
Yep.
And that was the stopping of negative in that case. That's not what he's referring to here. In this case, he's referring to enough in a very positive light, in knowing when you have reached the point where you have enough money. You don't need to keep pursuing more because pursuing more is just going to make you a terrible person. Like when that sort of line is crossed, you need to know when you've reached that point of enough. And I think this is important in a lot of arenas, and it's one that we don't do well with in general. At least I don't. Here's an example, and this is Mike might be upset for me saying this. When is enough books? Okay, so we've started doing video chat, and Mike just took his headphones off and pretended to walk away. I'm sorry. So, that's a question. It's like, when have you reached that point where you have enough books? Like, I don't know that I would say there's a point where I would say I've read enough books, like read enough books. There's probably a limit to ownership of books. Like, there's probably a point at which you shouldn't buy more. Don't know where that line is. Don't care to find that line. But when has enough happened? Finances is the easy one. When have you had enough? When is your salary or your income enough for you to feel comfortable? And when have you reached a point where you have enough friendships? Where are those lines, and can you recognize them whenever you hit those? Because so many people are just, once they achieve one thing, they're on to the next. And the achievement of a thing that they've been striving for is bittersweet. Like, yes, you've achieved it, but now you have nothing to live for, and you're not content. You're not able to sit back and enjoy the fact that you have a life that's worth living without needing the achievement or something to reach? When have you reached that point?
Yeah,
That makes
page
sense.
121, he says, we get to the finish line only to think, this is it? Now what? And that hit me because I literally had that happen to me after I ran my first half marathon. I was training for like a year and a half, actually overtrained. My patella tendon slipped off my kneecap onto the side of my leg. And I had been training for a long time. I was going to run the thing anyways, so I did. And immediately after I crossed the finish line, like they put the metal around your neck, you're walking through, you're grabbing the banana, they got water there for you. Like 10 seconds later, I had this go through my head. Like, okay, I ran my half marathon. Now what? I knew that I'd hurt my knee and I had physical therapy ahead of me, so I knew I couldn't run. The natural next thing is like find another race to run, but I couldn't do that. And this is my big problem with goals, because you can achieve a goal and then, is this it? What do I do? I guess I find another goal. I guess I push a little bit harder. And that's really at the heart of the Scrum model that we read that book. And I really like a lot about Scrum, but inherent in Scrum is that idea where like once you've accomplished everything that you set out to do, then you push yourself to do a little bit more. And that's the thing that just drives me nuts. So enough, I think from a physical standpoint, for me, I had to learn to love the process. I had to relearn how to run. I had to take 6 weeks off. Then I started running again, increased my distance too fast, dealt with plantar fasciitis, had to take another 6 weeks off. I mean, it was like 3 months before I could really run again. And I had to like not worry about my time, not worry about the distance. I had to just enjoy getting outside and going for a run, which is very appropriate right now because the fact that we've been home for all this time, like people go a little stir crazy. I am I am in that camp as well. But one of the things that has helped keep me sane during this time has been getting outside. So I have been running or biking every single day during this, since the quarantine started. I will usually run like 5 miles, which isn't, I mean, that's a pretty decent length, but it's not a half marathon like I was training for. You know, it was no big deal for me to go run 12, 13 miles on a Saturday. But so less distance, more frequently, not worried about the time, just enjoying getting out there. That is the mindset that we have to have. And I think it pertains to all the different areas of our lives, especially as it pertains to work. I think there is a tendency to focus on the outcomes and what you produce, especially for creatives. Like, what did I ship? And I was encouraged as I read this section about enough that we have at Blanc Media this whole concept of the sabbaticals, where every 8th week the company shuts down and we don't do any work. And that has been really cool. And I'm recognizing as I read this book again that is like a forced, systemic enough perspective that could we work that extra week? Yes, we probably could. Could we get more stuff done? Could we ship another product sooner? Could we make more money? Probably. But that's not the lifestyle that we want to live. We want to have a calm work culture. And I really am I'm appreciative of that. Interestingly, we just interviewed for Focused, and this episode will be up, I believe, by the time this one goes up. So I'll put a link to it in the show notes. We interviewed Sean McCabe. He's in the middle of a year-long sabbatical and happens to be the year that everybody is supposed to stay at home, except he sold his house and doesn't have a home. So a little bit interesting for him. He was supposed to travel the world. He was supposed to run a marathon. Yeah. Well, I won't do as good a job explaining it as he does. So just go listen to the episode if you're interested in that sort of thing. But he's kind of the champion, I think, of this whole sabbaticals idea. I know that he was influential in Sean Blanc embracing it with Blanc Media. But I really think this is a really cool idea. And I would encourage everybody to think about how you can systemically create this in your own life, whether it's work, personal, whatever.
And you're specifically talking about like a sabbatical of sorts.
Well, the sabbatical, I think, is a cool idea because I recognize a sabbatical is tied to this idea of enough. They are basically the same thing. The sabbatical is saying we could be working right now, but we choose not to because we've got enough.
Sure.
We can get enough done. We don't need to squeeze out one more thing because it's going to make us feel frantic and it's going to burn us out, yada, yada, yada.
Sure.
And I think you can apply that a lot of different ways, but the sabbatical is the example that came to mind for me as it pertains to the work side.
Makes sense. The next one I've got written down here is interrelationships. And I say this because, this is one I wanted to talk about because right now I feel like this is really hard. Wisconsin's probably not as bad as Minnesota, but right now we're still fairly locked down, and it makes it difficult to connect with other people. It's actually starting to reach a point where a large part of the state is kind of just breaking the rules, breaking all of the suggestions and recommendations and stuff because they're just tired, and they're tired of being stuck at home on their own. I get it. I do. It's hard to stay where you're told to stay, but I think this is why, because Ryan Holiday points out how relationships are super important and how building relationships and fostering those is one of the key components to a fulfilling life. So I think that, given the state that we're in right now and his comments, and, you and I have talked about, if you don't know what your mission in life should be, make it a mission to serve other people. We've talked about this sort of thing frequently and in a lot of ways. And I think there is a lot of value to this, and it's brought out here by Ryan Holiday in this concept of entering relationships, whether they're big or small or important or minor, doesn't matter. But being willing to develop relationships with other people is super important. So I was grateful that he pointed it out as part of this.
This is supposed to be my year of rest and relationships. So I have been struggling with this as well because, things are opening up a little bit more here in Wisconsin. We were at the point about a month ago where people were frustrated and just breaking all of the rules. So we are not, having people over and all that yet. But I will say that while we have been quarantined, we have been thinking, because this was part of my yearly theme, on other ways that we can build these. And this is something that I've been trying to do consistently. It's not something I do consistently enough, but there have been many times during this quarantine where I have gone through my list of contacts and just picked somebody that I FaceTimed and talked to. And some of the people that I've talked to are people that I wouldn't have talked to otherwise. It's not just people who are local, replacing, seeing people at church or anything like that. There has been some of that too, just checking in and seeing how people are doing. But I recognize that it took a global pandemic for me to reach out to people who I honestly have wanted to reach out to for a very long time. And why was it that way? Why was that the case? Why did I not even think about FaceTiming this person until now? Because every time that I've connected with somebody that way, it has felt really good. They have been very appreciative. And it's something that we don't have to wait until things go back to normal in order to do. That's kind of the thing I want to communicate to everybody else who's thinking about, well, I wish I could build my relationships, but I can't right now. You can, you just got to get a little creative with it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm not good at, especially given everything, I haven't been good about texting or FaceTiming with people at all because I'm in the weird spot where I am still seeing people and have been from day one. So this was a case from the very beginning. It's we're sacrificing Joe so that other people can so that everybody else can isolate. And right now I am just I keep thinking I'm coming out of it. And then we add something more and they're like, oh, let's do a big drive-in thing. I'm like, okay. And then we start bringing the Minnesota is now letting churches open back up to 25%. I still haven't quite been able to nail down my opinions on that, but as my job is for a church, I now have the honor and duty of running essentially 3 different events all at one time every Sunday, which takes a lot of work and stuff too. So my job continues to change on a week-to-week basis, and when I think I'm coming up for air, I'm actually getting ready to be shoved back down under. It's just kind of how it goes. But it's, it's a case where I am still seeing a lot of people, and even now that churches are starting to open up, I'm seeing a lot more people. I do my best to keep my distance because I don't know where people have been. And again, my role is one where it's kind of vital to the church at the moment. So my health and safety is very important in that case. So I have to watch handshakes that people try to give and ignore them, which is counter to what I feel like I should be doing. All this to say, I totally get Ryan Holiday's drive towards entering relationships and building those relationships. I see a ton of value in that, and it's one that I would highly recommend for other people. And it's just kind of slipped in here. Like a lot of these, it's just another small point that he's making in the broader scheme of what he's driving towards.
Yep. So,
which brings us to part 3, which actually I feel like is the easiest one to get action items from. Which I don't know.
I've got 3 of them so far. So
yeah. So the third part here is body. And let's repeat the process. Here are the chapter titles for body. Okay. The domain of the body, again, starts off that way. Say no, take a walk, build a routine, get rid of your stuff. It does not say books, Mike. Seek solitude, be a human being, go to sleep, find a hobby, beware escapism, act bravely, on to the final act. And on to the final act, I think, is kind of just his wrap up for the whole book at that point. So there's 3 specifics here I want to talk about. A couple of these are pretty quick, I feel like. Though I tend to say that, and then they're not. But life. The first of which is take a walk.
Yep.
This is something I feel has been discussed and has come up in a lot of different scenarios. You hear it from a lot of biographers, people talking about the benefits of going for walks. The one that stands out in my mind right now is the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson, where he discussed how Steve Jobs would, if you wanted to have a meeting with him, he loved to do walking meetings. It was like the thing that he did. So like that was one that jumped out to me, though that story is not in here, which there was no Apple reference in this book. Did you notice that? Like that?
I did not.
Shocked
but
me.
That's pretty awesome, to be honest.
A book like this, and Steve Jobs was not a part of it. Interesting.
So real quickly on that topic, I think the reason that it wasn't in here is because Ryan Holiday is so researched. It would have been easy to just find stuff to back the points that he was making and pull in a bunch of stuff from Apple, which it seems like that's what everybody else does because maybe it's trendy. But I also know Ryan Holiday, when he does his research, he does it paper pencil. He does it on note cards. And he has these boxes of note cards that he collects during his research. And I think like that gave him a larger data set to pull from. And the stuff that he chose is the right stuff to support his argument. It's very entertaining. It's very engaging. Didn't need an Apple reference to keep people hooked.
No. And I don't know this for certain, but I think at one point I ran across an article or a comment of some sorts that mentioned that Ryan Holiday does use the Zettelkasten method, the whole slipbox concept.
Doesn't surprise me.
The original paper version of it. Like not the Rome Research Obsidian version that we've been, like that's kind of taking over the world right now, but the old school pen and paper version of that, which is intriguing to me. This might be, okay, so this is the problem with these scenarios. Now I have this thought of, do I explore doing that as part of Analog Joe? Should I live stream the building of that? This is the way my brain works.
That would be amazing. You totally should.
I'm sure it would, but it sounds incredibly complicated in my brain.
Before you get yourself in too much trouble committing to things.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Appreciate that. Dig me out of this hole that I just dug into.
Let's talk about the take a walk section here.
Yep, that's probably good.
I agree. This is something that we've heard over and over again. And this is, when I read this section, this is kind of the incentive behind my get outside, bike or run every day habit. And I initially started doing that because the weather was starting to change and I just wanted to be outside. But I recognized the first couple times that I did it that it had a significant positive impact on my emotional state by the time I got back. So I would be home, and more often than I'd care to admit, I find myself just like scrolling through the news, getting upset at what I'm seeing, and then eventually I can't take it anymore. And I'm like, I got to go for a run. I got to get outside. I got to work out. Yesterday was a 3 workout day for me. I ran, I biked, and I lifted. But whenever I did it, by the time I got back, I felt much more calm. Ryan Holiday would use the word stillness. I can totally relate to that. And this is in the body section, but this definitely affects the others as well. I'm thinking of the Spaceship U video that CGP Grey put together. Have you seen that video about lockdown productivity?
I have not. I've seen it circulated, but I haven't actually sat down and watched it. Maybe I should do that when we get done here.
Phenomenal video. I think it's like 12 minutes long. He uses the analogy of quarantine as being in your own spaceship. And so kind of like Wall-E, where they send everybody to space, like, we're going to clean up the mess. You guys come back in a little bit when things have calmed down. And at the beginning, he talks about how your mission is to return better than you were before. And he uses this analogy of like, you're in this little spaceship. You need to set up these different spaces or these zones for the different areas that you have to maintain. He talks about the central core being this thing that you have to keep spinning. And there's 2 sides to that. There is the mental side, and then there is the physical side. And he makes the point in that video that the place to start is with the physical side. Just get moving. Just start exercising. Do something, and then that will get things moving, and then your spaceship can maintain itself, assuming that you've set everything else up the way that it should be. And I would differ a little bit, I think, in terms of some of the specifics of what he shares in there. But I really do think that's a great analogy. It's really well animated. It's a very well done video, and 100% agree with that point about the physical being the place to start. That's the easy thing. It's easy to just get outside and go for a walk. And then once you do that, you've got a little bit more margin, mental clarity, emotional stability. Like, you come back and you can try to do the other stuff.
So it's no secret that my family and I love to go hiking. And there's another one that we're going to talk about here in a bit is seeking solitude. This does not qualify as that because 3 kids, period. But what it does qualify as is taking a walk, and taking a walk through the woods specifically. We have a tendency to hunt mushrooms as part of that. We love our mushrooms. Had very little success hunting morels this year in Minnesota, but found tons of them in Iowa at one point. And right now we're in the middle of like getting into summer mushrooms and stuff. So we're out at least once every week, sometimes more than that, out taking walks. What I have found is that if I can, I try to get those times scheduled for either early afternoon or in the morning. Because what happens is when I get back from those, I'm ready to go to work and I want to go write some things down and I want to go kick some things out. Like, that's what happens whenever I'm done with those times. And if I wait until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock to go hiking, by the time we're out the door, go hiking and get back, it's like 5 o'clock. And at that point, it's clean everything up, get dinner on the table, kids to bed, and like the whole evening is gone at that point. So I'm not really going to get any work done when I get back from that. So mornings, I guess, are better because I can go whenever I'm done with that, even though I just hiked 6 miles. Like, that's where I'm sitting. There's all kinds of science and stuff behind all of the physical and the body side of that. Ryan Holiday talks a lot about the mental state of that and the benefits of your mind and the way that things work as a result of exercising your body in that way. All this to say, I'm going to continue hiking, But the one thing that I'm debating, because what that doesn't solve is there's one aspect that he mentions in that being able to do things on your own and trying to like clear your mind of things instead of being willing to just let your mind run and race wherever it wants to go, which is what I do when we go hiking. I can't really just clear my mind and not think about things and just enjoy the moment whenever I'm out there because 3 kids. So I'm constantly keeping an eye on them. Did they just fall into a creek? Like, I don't know where, one of them in particular, I never know where she is. Like, here we go. So I want to start trying to find a way to take walks, maybe not daily, but a couple times a week, to just take 30 minutes, go outside, do a quick walk, even just around the neighborhood, just on my own. Like, that's a thing I want to try to do. So I have that down as an action item because I feel like although I do get the exercise side of it, I don't feel like I get the mental clarity that can come from it as well.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, when you add kids to anything, it changes the dynamic for sure.
Totally does. Next one here I want to talk about is get rid of your stuff. And he primarily points out that stuff tends to require your attention, and it requires maintenance. It requires upkeep. If it breaks, you must fix it. You know, the bigger the house you have, the more things there are to break and maintain. So smaller is better in a lot of cases. That's his point here. I can honestly say that my wife and I have been very deliberate in getting rid of as many things as we can. We have like these 2 or 3 days a year where it seems like, and it's not scheduled, it's not planned. It's just like, this is really bothering me. Tomorrow I'm cleaning out this entire area and I'm donating it all. Like those times happen, and they do happen seemingly regularly. But it's a thing that I feel like is important to call out because in the world we live in, it's very easy to land in the camp of collecting things and having a lot of stuff. And that's not good for your mental state or your physical state or your pocketbook, for that matter.
Yeah, makes the point that more stuff equals less freedom. My wife probably would be more like you, where she wants to get rid of things. I am not a hoarder, but I'm just indifferent. So I'm not going to take action on stuff until one day she does it. And then I'm like, hey, where'd that go? And she's like, oh, I gave it away.
Whoops, sorry. Hope you don't want that anymore.
That does happen.
That's hilarious.
But I do think there's some truth to that. And this is kind of an interesting time to be talking about this. I remember when the quarantine started, I saw some internet cartoon of 2 people, and one of them was saying to the other one, like, don't look at me. You're the one who got rid of everything that didn't spark joy. So you go have fun with your 5 folded t-shirts or whatever. Point being that, like, now you are stuck at home and maybe you shouldn't have gotten rid of everything because really what you were clinging to was some other semblances of your day-to-day that you don't have access to anymore. I think there's an element of truth to that. So it isn't just the things that you can get attached to. It can be specifics in your own way of life. But I do think that the less complicated your life is, then the more stillness you have, and like he says, the more freedom you have, the more joy you have, because you're not constantly worried about maintaining the things.
Like if you have a grill, like, yeah, it's nice to cook outside, but it requires you cleaning it regularly in order to keep it from rusting and falling apart. And you got to refill the bottle on occasion. If you have more than 2 vehicles and there's only 2 of you driving in the house, that means you've got extra maintenance for the oil changes and tires and, coolant levels and blah, blah, blah,
exactly.
Blah, blah. Like there's a lot more to keep an eye on. The bigger your house is, the more carpet that needs swept regularly. Like there's a lot that can come with that. I'm referring to like motors and things, but people don't always realize like tools need maintained too sometimes. So,
yep.
I've got a fair number of power tools, but they require cleaning on a fairly decent basis. Otherwise, they'll clog up and the motors will burn up. We won't talk about how I know that, but that's a thing that happens.
Yeah, pets would be another example. I mean, our previous dog passed away last summer, and we knew we wanted to get another dog, but we also knew at the time that life was complicated and we didn't want to deal with that yet. So we waited until I think it was December we got our golden doodle. But it was the right thing at the right time, and it's not stressful. Like, she brings joy to our house, but if we had gotten her earlier and we were traveling and we had to figure out where we're going to have her stay when we get on an airplane, all that kind of stuff, like that can weigh on you, and that can totally change the perspective of the thing. And instead of now bringing joy, it's bringing stress. And there's so many things that can do that it's worth thinking these through. We're not, because I feel stressed that that you have a dog, that's not, you're not going to just give away the dog. Especially can't do that with kids. Like, you got to make this work now.
We can only handle 2 kids, so that third one, I love you, but
Yeah. But I think it's worth thinking about, not just is this the right thing, but is this the right time? There isn't a simple formula for this, but always err on the side of margin, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
So there's one last section here I want to go through, and that is seek solitude. And I'm curious, Mike, what your thoughts are on this, given we both live in towns, in neighborhoods where getting away from all of the motor noises and just the buzz of homes, do you see value in seeking solitude?
Is that a trick question?
I'm asking the person who does like these regular personal retreats. So
yeah, exactly. So yeah, in this section they talk about the twice per year Bill Gates taking a think week at a cabin in the woods. They say, Ryan says on page 218, it's hard to make that time. It's hard and expensive to get away. We have responsibilities, but they will be better for our temporary disappearance. We will carry back with us the stillness from our solitude in the form of patience, understanding, gratitude, and insight. This is 100% my experience with these personal retreats. So we believe, my family, the way we operate, that I am the one who should be setting the direction for the family, not just for myself work-wise, but, and that's not saying my wife's not an equal partner, but we believe that that's my responsibility. I've got to go spend the time, get the plan, and then come back and we get in agreement on the specifics of it. It'll change, because I'll not see stuff that my wife will see, but ultimately I can't abdicate that responsibility and be like, you just figure it out. I'm going to work, I'm going to bring home the bacon, and you figure everything else out. So I take this responsibility seriously. I don't want to just dictator Mike be like, this is what we are going to do. I really want to make sure that I get this right. So the personal retreat is the thing that allows me to do that. And my wife would be the first to say that this is absolutely a very valuable routine that we have. It makes everything a lot easier when I take the time to try to figure this out and then come back and communicate it to her. And again, I'm not just saying like Moses coming down from the mount with the stone tablets. This is what we are doing. Like, they are changing and evolving as we work through some things. But I am the one who needs to initiate that. If I don't initiate it, then we just kind of get stuck in the day-to-day. That's when we end up not being in alignment. That's when we end up pulling in opposite directions and things are way harder than they have to be. So yes, this is something that I do. Yes, it is absolutely something I would argue that everybody should do. He makes the case in that quote that even though it may be expensive, I'm pretty privileged because my parents have a place up in Door County. It's up on a hill. When you're up there, it doesn't feel like there's anybody near you. It does feel like you are alone. It's got a view down the hill. Like, it's not actually on the water, but you can see the water, trees all over the place. Like, it feels different. It's chill. There's just something about being up there that produces the stillness that he's talking about in this whole book. So that's what I do. But even if I had to go rent an Airbnb, this is something that I would do. And I do actually try to maybe this isn't solitude, maybe this is like the forest bathing, whatever, but we live in a suburb, but it's close enough to nature that when I go for a run, when I go for a bike ride, I can get out into a place where I'm just surrounded by nature. And that has a positive effect as well. It's not the solitude where like I'm getting the epiphanies because I'm spending a week out there, but even just getting out there for a half an hour, that helps.
Yeah, I don't know that I would do like I know you do like these overnight deals. I don't know that that's something I would put into this. I'm sure there's some value in that, but personally, I think the area that I need to focus on, because like taking walks and doing the hikes and such, you kind of like the whole forest bathing concept we haven't discussed. Like that comes along for the ride with that. But seeking solitude, like getting outdoors and being on my own or just a place on my own, doesn't matter. Like that is something I need to do. I don't want to say every week, but something I should do regularly. Because I haven't done that in a long time. Now, I say that knowing that we have a vacation planned coming up here in a couple weeks. We'll see how lockdowns and such and what we choose to do at that time if we actually follow through on things. But that is the goal. And the location of that would put me in mountains with very little cell reception, which could be amazing.
Yeah, I don't think, though, that what he's talking about with solitude is necessarily the same as a vacation. He kind of makes the point with Bill Gates takes his Think Week that that's actually really hard work. So most people think of vacation, they think of kicking their feet up, being able to relax.
Well, the thing that I was getting to on that is because, like, yes, we're going on vacation, but it'll be up in mountains and in a secluded place, which would then give me the opportunity to take 1 or 2 days or times to go out on my own and do a solitude practice of sorts at those times. Like, I don't think of the entire vacation as that. I think there are definitely some elements of some other pieces here that will come into it, but I want at least one piece of that to have an aspect of solitude that comes with it. But I do need to figure that out locally at home too, though. Like I need to get that dialed in.
I think you could get a taste of solitude during your vacation, but unless you're like camping by yourself in the mountains for a day or two, I don't think you can really achieve what he's talking about.
Probably
here.
not, no.
And I don't think it needs to be a week like Bill Gates does, but I do think that the longer you give yourself to just think about things, that whole idea of thinking time, that you will get to new levels in terms of solitude.
Yes, agreed. 100%. What else do you want to say about this book, Mike?
Actually, there's one more thing on the Beware Escapism. Page 246 says, to build a life you don't need an escape from. And I think that's a really powerful statement. I think it's something that isn't necessarily an action item for me, but it's something I've been thinking about. He shares a lot of stories in here about like people in their daily routines, like famous people, and how they would go through these routines day in, day out, every day for years, which that's a whole section in here, by the way, about routines. And that's actually an action item for me, is to make a routine out of everything that I can. But I recognize I'm in kind of a cool position where I could do that sort of thing. And I think that's awesome. I think that it's something people should strive for. And if you can't control every aspect of your life right now, then don't worry about that, but control what you can control and think about how to not just live for the next vacation, but to create those routines throughout your day-to-day where, like, if you were to describe your perfect day, what does that look like? And then think about how could you pull aspects of that off. As I'm thinking through this, I'm like, you know what? I've got a pretty sweet opportunity here to do that.
Nice. Well, I think we should step into action items here because I feel like there are a few, at least that I have. I've got 5 written down, which I don't know what the record is for the most action items I've had for a show or for a specific book. I'd be curious to know that one as well. I have all these questions about myself and about what all is going on. But here are the five I have. One is I want to limit the inputs that I'm taking in. That one really jumped out at me as something that I don't do well with, because I have a tendency to just want to absorb anything and everything. And it's okay to turn the stuff off. We've talked about the digital issues with the addictions and such, digital minimalism, if I can get the word out. And I need to come back to that. It's forever a cycle of, you do really well and then you slowly add things back in and then you have a problem again. So that's one. I mentioned stepping back into journaling. That's number 2. Stepping back into meditation, which would be number 3. The solitude piece that I needed to work out as number 4. And then trying to take regular walks by myself. That's an indicator that I need to add to that list. By myself. Writing right now. There you go. That's what I have. Those are my 5.
All right. I do not have 5, but I do have 4, which are, like you, to limit my inputs. That I've done a pretty decent job of already, but I think it's something worth considering again as we transition back to a normal life post-quarantine, to not let things just creep back to where they were and to maintain the margin that we've got. I want to be in the moment, and this is something I need to wrestle through specifically what this looks like, because the struggle I have is my kids are growing up, and it seems like every single day they are bigger. I want to preserve the memories, but I also want to enjoy the moments that we are making together. So specifically, like, where's the line between take out the phone and take a picture and just be here and enjoy it? And I don't know exactly where that is yet. I've got one to try journaling using pen and paper inside my bullet journal, which we talked about, and then to make a routine out of everything that I can. So this is inspired by my time blocking practice and recognizing the patterns for specific days, and I'm thinking about how I can tweak those a little bit to produce like my ideal day. Instead of at the end of the day, as I'm planning the next day, thinking about what are the things that I need to do in the blocks that are going to happen, how can I kind of standardize this stuff in a way that's awesome?
Sounds like a tall task.
It does.
Did
you expect anything less from
me? Tall task, it's hard to hold you to. Okay.
Yep.
Sounds about right. It's how we do things.
That's right.
Style and rating. I suppose this is my choice, so I get the honors of going first here. Ryan Holiday is very easy to read. He's very good at putting a book together and putting together his thoughts and telling stories that, like, I don't know that there were many stories in this, and there's one in every single one of those chapters, multiple in those chapters in a lot of cases. Most of those I feel like were brand new to me, which is another testament to him. I mean, there are definitely some, like, the story behind it, but the detail that he brought out into it and the specific points and the facts that he brought out in it were definitely new. So kudos to Mr. Holiday on that one. That was a job well done. As far as content goes, there is the whole stoicism undertone that follows the whole thing. It's not even an undertone. It's just right out in front in a lot of cases. And I can see how so much of this is core to stoicism. I'm not going to say I'm a stoic or want to become a stoic. Ryan Holiday runs a site, Daily Stoic, and that is not something I find myself wanting to gravitate towards, but there are a lot of aspects of it, as are brought out in this particular book, that I definitely resonate with. Thus, the large number of action items that I get out of this. To me, this is an easy 5-star book. Like, it's pretty simple for me to put it up there. There's so much of this that is super valuable, no matter where you're at, in whatever season you're at, even if you just need the motivation. If you're a full-blown stoic professional, like, this is still going to be one that you should go through just for the motivation. But if you're completely new to like self-management and such, like this is definitely one that you need to pick up and go through. Like this is an easy one to recommend. Like you need this, especially in today's world, like with everything that's going on. This is something you need to read.
I agree with you. This is a great book. It's easy to recommend. Ryan Holiday's style I've always liked, but this book seems to take it to another level in terms of how concise things are and how clear things are. One of the things that he does really, really well is he varies the sentence structure and length, which makes it much more interesting to read. I'm not quite sure how to explain that, but if you were, this is something that I struggle with in my writing, is you form your complete sentence and then you form another complete sentence, and if they all are basically the same length, they all start to sound the same. And what that does is it makes the words that you are saying less impactful. So Ryan Holiday is kind of the master at varying this stuff, and it makes the words that he writes very impactful. And so even if you don't necessarily agree with everything that he says in here, it is very easy and very entertaining, very educational to read. I also think he is one of the best storytellers that I have ever read. And his stories are a little bit different because he doesn't tell, like most of the time when we think of good storytellers, we think of the emotions that they evoke and like building up to these climactic moments. He's very factual, gets to the point very quickly, and then is on to the next thing. And the effect that that has on you is it builds trust, I feel like, as a reader. You feel like you can trust him, like he is very learned and he has really studied this stuff and he knows what he's talking about. So while I tend to question a lot of people when I read their books, I didn't find myself doing that a whole lot with Ryan Holiday. And a lot of that is because it's not the stories that he tells anyways. They're not his opinions. They are research. We mentioned this at the beginning, that like when he talks about the different religions, when he talks about Christianity, he's referencing not his interpretation of a text, but what the text actually says, looking at the Greek Hebrew words and what they mean, and then comparing that side by side with something else from another arena and providing more context. So really, really easy to read. I think there's not a whole lot you can nitpick in this book. I guess you could make the argument that if one of these sections really struck you, that they are kind of shallow, like the journaling section, for example, is a couple of pages. We spent a lot of time talking about it, far longer than Ryan spent writing about it. So I think there is a possibility that you feel yourself wanting more in a specific section, but I feel it's really well laid out. I feel like it flows really well. I feel like all this stuff ties together really well. I don't feel like any of these chapters were not needed. I don't know. I just think it's really, really well done. So I agree that it is a 5-star book. I read this previously as a gap book. So reading it again, I lost a little bit of the impact I think that it had on me when I first read it. I didn't get done thinking like, oh my gosh, this changed my life. But it's really, really good. I do think that it's easy to glean action items out of this too. I mean, I've got 4, you've got 5. So it's not something that you have to like take in the totality of it. There are, because the chapters are formed the way that they are, little things that can jump out at you and are easier to implement and can have a positive impact on your life. But I can't wait for the next Ryan Holiday book. This is a good one.
Yeah, somebody in the chat mentioned we should do Ego as the Enemy, just because, we like his other 2 books, so why not, right?
Sure.
So I'm not going to pick it right now because we just did this one.
Yep.
But, yeah. No, this is one where like, it may not be like crazy groundbreaking when you read it. You might have some action items out of it, but I feel like it's one of those that you will continually come back to. Like when we read How to Read a Book by Mortimer Adler, it was one of those things that like when we read it, we weren't super thrilled with it. I still think through that thing and reference it. And every time I pick up a new book, I'm considering how I'm reading it and what I need to review before I start reading it. Like, it wasn't one that struck me at the time, but it still hits me every time I pick up a book. And I feel like this is going to be the same way. Like, it seems to have that sense. So there you have it. So we can put that one on the shelf. What's next, Mike?
Next is Triggers by Marshall Goldsmith. So returning to the topic of habits and routines. This is one that I had heard discussed on Cortex a while back, immediately bought, and then haven't gotten to it yet. So going to bring you along for the ride.
That works. I'm game. Following that one, I suppose I picked a book for this one, is Reclaiming Conversation by Sherry Turkle. And this has to do with getting back to how do you hold a conversation in the world of digitalness. So I think that'll be interesting, considering this whole show is a conversation. So we'll see how that one goes. We'll have a conversation about conversations. I do not have a Gap book this time around, Mike, but I'm guessing everybody and their brother's dog knew that was coming.
I hesitantly have a Gap book.
Ooh.
Not sure if I'm going to get to it. I'm still trying to get through how to take smart notes and rethinking how I'm using Roam with that. So I'm going through it a little bit slower than last time. But I also just got Michael Hyatt's new book, No Fail Communication. It's on my coffee table. I had to turn and look, see what the title was. These books I really like. Another one is like No Fail Meetings. They're very short. They're smaller. They're an easy read, probably a couple of hours to get through the whole thing. So the plan is to get through that one for next time, but we will see.
All right. Well, you've heard me mention this a couple times, but we do have a live chat going for members. There is a paid membership. It's $5 a month. You get a cool, awesome Bookworm background, but the big part is you get access to the live recordings. You can join us as we're doing this. And my goal is to get this to the point where we're doing video live. So I'm still working through some of that. My goal is, I think next time we're going to get that live for members. If you want to become a member, I've had a couple people point out that this was hard to find. Just go to bookworm.fm and go to the menu. It's on the top now. Just membership. Same thing if you're on the club.bookworm.fm. You can join the club. That's where we have the live chat and the live listening part of it. It's up in the menu for that as well. So I tried to make that easier to find. So all that to say, you should become a member. You can join us when we're doing these recordings. A lot of times what happens is Mike gets to talking and then I type into the chat. And then when we're all done, Mike goes back and reads it all and says, this is what he noticed, because Joe's brain can handle typing and talking at the same time, but Mike doesn't seem to be able to do that.
Not so much, no.
Which is very entertaining for me. But all that to say, you should become a member, and you can do that at bookworm.fm/membership, or just click the link in the menu.
Or if you listen in Overcast, tap the little icon in the bottom. That'll take you to that page too. Cool. Thanks everybody for listening. If you're reading along with us, pick up Triggers by Marshall Goldsmith, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.